Phil and Kiki Tura of Bourne, Massachusetts want to take 100 years of paint off their front door. I'm going to see if I can lend a hand. I understand the project's got to do with the front door.
That's correct.
What's going on here?
Well, we have an old door with needs some help.
This looks like the original door.
Yes, it is.
Probably with the original paint.
Probably.
So what you guys want to do?
Well, we'd like to strip it down and see what's underneath.
Removing the door means lifting it off these hinge pins. To get some leverage and save our backs, we use a pry bar and a block of wood. And off it comes. Higher. There we go. Okay, we're off. You know, this is fantastic that you've got a barn here to work in.
That's true.
And this is built about the same time as the house, you think?
Yes, it was.
Okay, probably 100 years of paint on here. One concern I have is that some of this paint undoubtedly contains lead. So we're going to take some extra precautions today. We don't create a health problem with that. But for right now, let's take off all this hardware. As the hardware comes off, some of the door's paint history reveals itself, giving us an idea of just how many layers we're dealing with.
I found 2 more colors, so we have some cream and a blue color, so that's 4 so far.
Now here's my concern. This glass is held in here with glazing putty, and it's in really bad shape. So Kiki and Phil go to work scraping out the old glazing. Can't you just tell they're newlyweds?
How you doing over there, sweetie?
Okay.
Okay, we're free. That did it. Okay. Hardware is off, glass is out. Well, it's time to start removing 100 years of paint. Much of this paint undoubtedly contains lead. Lead was a common ingredient in house paints until the late 1970s. Although removing paint with chemical strippers is much safer than sanding or scraping, we'll still need the right safety gear: respirators, disposable paper coveralls, rubber gloves, and eye protection. We're going to use a paste-type stripper that will cling to the moldings and detail work. We apply it with brushes by just laying it on the surface. Overbrushing can cause the active ingredients to evaporate, making the stripper less effective. After a few minutes, the paint begins to soften and then bubble. By using a wide putty knife, we can lift off several layers at a time. Brass bristle brushes are the best tools for removing loose paint from the moldings. Finally, we've gone about as far as we can go. Boy, we got a lot of paint off this. I'd say 8 to 10 coats, but when we got down to the last 2 or 3, which are probably 75 or 80 years old, that stripper that we were using just wouldn't touch it. So we're going to have to change to a different kind of stripper. This is a paste alkaline-based stripper. It doesn't have any fumes. It's water-based, but we do want to keep our eyes and hands protected. The way to put this on is with a putty knife. We just sort of spread this onto the flat surfaces like that. A brush works best when applying the paste to moldings and other irregular surfaces. Now we've got to keep this wet for 24 hours for it to really work. And to do that, we're going to use some freezer paper. There we go. Now this has a shiny side and a dull side. Put the shiny side up. It's important to press the paper firmly in contact with the stripping paste to eliminate as much air as possible. We also cover the paper with heavy plastic sheeting. So let's leave this. We'll come back tomorrow, take it off, and see what we've got. Okay?
Great.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We've let this sit overnight. Let's see what's going on here. Ah, look at this. Just take that off, guys. Boy, you can see that it's really done something here. It's pulled a tremendous amount of pigment out of this paint. As we lift off the paper, we can see that much of the paint has released right down to the bare wood. Use the putty knives and get them under the paper and lift as you go like this. So we're definitely right down to the wood here.
Look at that.
Right down to the wood. Yep. Now,
whatever stripper and old paint we can't scrape off, we wash off with a sponge and water.
Looking very nice, huh?
Very nice, great.
So let's do the next section. Remember, we want to keep this damp, so we're doing it one section at a time. And as we lift this, we need to have the putty knife under here. We don't want to rely on the paper.
Kiki, Phil, and I use wide and narrow putty knives to remove the stubborn 100-year-old paint. But it finally becomes clear that even using this method, some of the old paint just hasn't given up its hold on the wood.
It's reassuring to have you here and this not work perfectly. If I'd done this by myself, I would have felt like I had done something wrong.
Oh, that's very interesting. So having the so-called expert here and
Yes.
seeing that it didn't work perfectly for him,
Right.
Makes it okay for you?
Yes, it does.
Well,
It's less frustrating.
Well, the day is just about over, so
coming
we
out
peel off our protective gear and talk about where to go from here. Am I glad to be out of that?
That's for sure.
Okay, guys, I've got to head down the road, so I'm going to leave you with this. You've got a couple of options. I think one more application of stripper, and this paint would come off. You could then stain and varnish it, or you can let it dry, sand it, and then just prime and paint it. The choice would really be up to you.
Great.
But what a great first home improvement project on this beautiful 103-year-old house, your front door. And I am especially honored that you would spend your honeymoon working with me on a home improvement project.
Thanks for helping us.